Well, thank you everyone for tuning in and joining us today. We have right now Brad Overton, who is a member of the Warrick County Council and running for re-election to one of the at-large seats. Joining us in that conversation is Tara Barney, President and CEO of the Southwest Indiana Chamber, Sherry Sherman, Executive Director of the Warrick County Chamber, Carrie Flegel with Alcoa, who serves on our Government Affairs Committee, and I will turn this over to Tara at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for being with us, sir. We are aware that campaigning in the year of COVID is not the easiest strategy in the world, so we're hopeful that by sharing this Zoom conversation with our respective chambers members and others and making it available to you, it'll be helpful. So I'm going to start off with the question that I know you're probably expecting, and that is about the budget, because the pandemic has certainly caused an adjustment in revenues for most of our local governments. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on your priorities to protect or increase funding in those things that you find important, and where you might see opportunities for contraction if you have a smaller resource level to work with.
Well, right now we're fortunate because with the projected income that we have for next year, we're still in really good, solid shape. We're not projected to have really a significant decrease at this point in time. So we're kind of holding our breath and hoping things continue along that path. As far as reductions, I will have to say, I'm trying to get out of the sun. That might be a little bit better. There we go.
That's good. Yeah.
The one thing that we have tried to do on this council is really run things at a very fiscally responsible manner all along. So I wouldn't say that I could just point to one particular area and say, I think that would be a good spot to try to make some reduction. So
are there places you'd like to invest more? I won't hold you to it. I'm just curious.
Sure. Well, the one thing that one thing as far as, I don't know if we necessarily want to call it investment, but I think my biggest area of interest right now is with our healthcare costs. And they are continuing to skyrocket. So I don't even know that COVID at the moment might be is our biggest imminent threat, but I feel like these rising costs for insurance are really, we were projected, I couldn't give you the exact numbers, but basically we came in probably over $1.25 million or $1.5 million from what we were expecting for insurance costs. So that's really where I'm seeing our biggest area of concern. So that's kind of my not new, but will be the primary focus in this upcoming year.
Well, that's good to hear. I know that's a priority of the business communities as well, and to many who've watched those costs climb over the years.
Well, and unfortunately in county government, we don't have a lot of things that we could increase production or try to increase sales on. So, I mean, that is one thing where we've got a little bit of a handcuffed.
Well, we encourage you not to increase taxes, but I'm just kidding.
That's the one thing that I've really tried to hold back on. So
I'll pass this on to my colleagues for the next question.
Sure.
All right, Brad, thank you for coming and talking to us today. One of my questions is the business community are seeing increase in total population within the region, specifically, particularly 20 to 34 years age. And so what are your thoughts on providing programs and emphasis to those in the 20 to 34 age group? And what programs or infrastructure investments do you think will help attract those people to the region and more specifically to Warrick County?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest things that's attracting people, especially around the Freedman Park area, are the wonderful walkways around that park. I run, and my daughter and I were out there last weekend, and you can just see the amount of just foot traffic on those trails at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And that is really I think that's a big drawing point for people right now. And as we've heard from economic development, I mean, that's just continuing something that we're investing money in. And I know I may sound somewhat contradictory because I have fought a little bit for the funding at Freedman Park, or kind of seemed like I may be against some of that funding. But what I have tried to do is also spread that funding around through the entire county. So I've really been pushing for funding over at Scales Lake and for improvements there. And I believe we've seen those improvements happen. And also we've provided some additional support up in the Linville area for the new trail that they have that leads towards, that's down 68 heading toward the high school. And another, I mean, I just think with Scales Lake being so close, I live very close to it. And I just feel like we're very fortunate to have a nice local park, place to walk, place to ride bicycles, mountain bikes. And then Freedman Park just continues to grow. Plus that event center, I think, is going to bring in younger people in that 20 to 35 age group with a lot of weddings and parties, those types of events. And plus, I think it's also going to capture the graduation events that we'll see there. I think that may be a place where we'll start to see more graduation activities begin to occur as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Brad, it's my turn.
Hello.
Good afternoon. I hope you're doing well. The County Council plays a significant role in guiding and improving economic development incentives. As you consider future development projects, what do you think the most important things are to consider in granting incentives, and what type of incentives are you most supportive of?
Well, the biggest thing that I have with all of our incentives is I want to see the number of jobs coming in. That is what really is going to encourage me to get behind tax phase-ins and those other economic incentives that we have. And in fact, the last council meeting, I didn't support one. And the reason I didn't, it was only bringing in 4 jobs. I mean, I know it was in the Northern Industrial Park, but I really want to see if we feel like we're going to give a business a temporary break on taxes and paying that revenue or shortening that revenue stream for us. I think we need to be bringing in those jobs. And what I would really like to see, I wish we could get in just some factory level jobs. We've made some improvements with some bringing in a few more technologically advanced jobs, but I wish, and just really wish, we could get something on the long lines of getting back into those, either a factory or more industrial type, because my father worked in the coal mines for years north of Boonville. And I really feel like even in the Boonville area, when those coal mines went away, I think that made such a huge economic impact. I mean, I know Oakdale, Logue School, and I'm sure Chandler is the same as well, but all of those schools, they have at least 50% or more reduced lunches for the kids in those schools. And I really think we need to be able to try to get some jobs back that it's not going to necessarily require a college degree, something that people can just step right out of high school and move into those positions and use some of our technical, like Ivy Tech, some of those schools where you can get those short-term degrees, where you get out and get those welding, kind of the same workers that Alcoa was looking for as well. And I really think if we could do that, I think we could turn around these communities and not see as much as the blight that we see. I mean, Boonville's made some good push as far as reducing some of the blight infested areas and getting rid of some of that housing that unfortunately has become an eyesore. And I think that's a big key thing that I would like to see come in here, is more of those blue collar type jobs, and just allowing people to step right out of high school, go right to work, and have something that they can at least get a good income and get people started.
Okay. All right, Brad, I have another question. We're seeing a lot of growth along Highway 66 and Grimm Road area. We have potential of a couple more hotels coming in that are interested. Their main concern is the ability for eastbound traffic to be able to get into North Grimm Road. And that, so the state had said that they would put one in when the traffic warrants it, but the traffic, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg and that. And so what do you think incentive-wise or actually building the stoplight or finishing the build. It's, everything's there. It's just, the lights need to go up. What do you think that Warrick County Council or the commissioners or just the county as a whole can do to get that project moving forward?
Well, I think one of the first things to try to keep moving that is just to increase the pressure and having, with Bobby Howard at the highway department and then even with our stormwater department, I think those two areas just kind of continuing to apply that pressure and look at those studies, and hopefully we can continue to see that traffic increase. And I think they've done a really good job in the past as far as trying to get those improvements, even along over there in that area for some of those other improvements that we've had. And, the council, I know we've backed funding for certain things when we get some matching grants through the state. And we've got some good grant writers. We were able to access or at least get in touch with some of the good grant writers as well. So I think it's kind of a two-pronged approach. It's perhaps with the commissioners kind of, getting a little more push, and us just kind of really pushing with the highway department and trying to get the engineers to look at those numbers and just kind of continuing to help that area, because traffic is that side of the county, and traffic is really starting to be. My wife works over off of Epworth, and it's just a struggle to turn out of there and to turn and go north. And it's, we just really need to make sure we don't end up really getting so big too soon and having those traffic restrictions, because nobody wants to be known as Stoplight City Part 2, but we need to make sure that we're continuing to do that development at a proper pace as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, first of all, I want to thank you for paying attention to Scales Lake. I've walked around that lake, and that is no small feat, let me tell you, because I didn't realize how big it was until I actually started walking around it. So it is a beautiful property.
4 miles round trip from the front to the back gate.
I'm aware, and it was a hot summer day the first time I did it. So
yes.
But more substantively, just say a few words about those things that you'd like to champion in another term, serving the Warrick County geography and this whole region. What are your special issues?
Well, some of the things that I've really had a heart for in the past were, of course, was Scales Lake, but I'm really, and the one thing that I'm really kind of proud of and just is the revampment that we did of the courthouse. And I think that's just a thing that I'm still proud about that. I mean, I'll walk to that building and go into a meeting, and it's just amazing to see what we've done there. But as far as moving forward, I think the one thing that I would, and we've got incentives in place, and we've put the money out, and they're starting to develop that fiber network. I see those signs out, even out past my house. And I think that's something that if we can continue to strengthen that and to get that internet, and I don't think people up until the COVID issue realized how important it is to have that good connectivity. And, I'm right on the end where I live. And every time I speak to AT&T, they go, well, if I don't even know how you have connection where I'm at. And I said, I don't either. But I think that's one thing to try to champion. And then another thing that I would like to see, I still think we've got a lot of potential up in that area up north, around where the old coal mines used to be. And there's just a lot of land that's up there that's just kind of sitting fallow. And I think there's a lot of prime areas where people could get up and we could have some more outdoor recreational activities. I don't necessarily have anything in mind at the moment, but I think that's just an area that's wide open. And I feel like, you see so many leases from, people that they get together, maybe wealthy landowners or people just with some, wealth have purchased lands or have these long-term leases. Well, that kind of shuts out your average person to get back in and go fishing, because if I can access, Scales Lake, probably everybody in the county's fish that place as well. But I know there's a lot of areas up there in those old coal mines before things shut down. I mean, I remember as a kid, I'd drive up through there and you could always find some place to go fishing. And I'd love to see some of those areas get opened back up, because granted, that work that was done there was very valuable, and it provided a lot of income and helped my family as well. But I think there's still a lot of payback that needs to be done just from the amount of destruction, if you have no other word to say it, but that was before that was done to the land. So I would like to see some of that land come back and allow more open access for our community to be able to access that and use it and just get some more use out of it.
Okay, I think I get the last question, and it brings us back to the pandemic, which is, what lessons are you taking away from the pandemic for your future, for future use on the council?
Well, I think if this pandemic has shown us one thing, is we need to make sure we always have a solid emergency fund. And that's one thing that if we get extra distributions from the state, we've always allocated a portion to economic development, but we'll always allocate another significant amount to continue to keep that emergency fund up. We were just speaking at the last council meeting about one of the murder trials from, well, it was the Stevenson trial from years back, and that put a huge financial strain on the county's budget. I mean, it really drove us into a very dark spot. I wasn't on the council at that point in time, so you just never know what's going to happen. And I think if we're going to continue to be fiscally responsible, we're going to have to look at those insurance costs, and we're still going to have to maintain that emergency fund. And we can't use the emergency fund to just continue to provide additional resources for insurance costs. We've got to find out some way to do that, and then continue not just to maintain the county solvency, but to make sure we're prepared, and that if there is something that happens in another surrounding county or anything where we could help out and just to be a good neighbor, we need to be prepared, because we never know what type of natural disaster could happen. As we easily see here, if some invisible enemy came after us here, and sometimes it's a lot more visible, that causes the visual destruction that you see. We have to be prepared for both sides.
Well, I sure appreciate your regional perspective on that, because I think that the pandemic's taught us all something. It's that we got to hang together on these things, because I can't even begin to guess at the tail of this situation and what it's going to mean to our business community. So I appreciate your thoughts on that. And I sure appreciate this conversation. If there's anything you want to leave with you know, the viewers, the folks you're talking to as we wrap up, love to give you a minute to speak to it.
Well, one thing I'd just like to say that I took this position on, let's see, back in 2008. And I really wanted to be a part of something and to try to make a difference. And everybody can talk and everybody can complain. And I think in this environment that we've seen nowadays, you have just two sides. It seems like there's not a middle anymore. Everybody's just going at it. But I actually wanted to be a part and try to do something. And I feel like I have. I mean, as a councilman, I've never felt like I've been pushed to one side or the other. I've always tried to make the best decision for the county. And I'll continue to do that, whether it's a 6-1 vote that I'm the one for, or if it's a 7-0 vote because there's something that I've championed and been able to push forward. So I'm going to continue to do that. And I always say, if you don't like my voting record and you don't think that I've done my job in the county, then by all means vote for somebody else. And I don't need to continue to serve, but I serve at the people's pleasure. So whatever they have to do.
Well, on behalf of the chamber, Sherry, anything else you want to wrap up on?
No, just thank you, Brad, for your time. Appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
You're welcome, Sherry. I appreciate the opportunity.